I never thought my daughter would hide me at her own wedding, but there I was, stuck in the kitchen, invisible to everyone. It was supposed to be a day of joy, a celebration of love and family. But that wasn't the case for me. I spent weeks preparing for Lily's wedding, eager to see my daughter walk down the aisle, to watch her start this new chapter of her life. I wore the lavender dress my late husband had bought me. It was simple but beautiful. A dress for a special day, a day I thought would be filled with warmth and love. But instead, I found myself alone. In the kitchen. Alone. While everyone else was in the living room, celebrating, laughing, and mingling, I was left to chop vegetables and stir pots. I tried to brush it off at first, thinking maybe Lily had just forgotten to include me in the photos, or maybe she wanted some time to herself. But as the day went on, I realized it wasn't an accident. It was intentional. No one came to check on me. No one asked if I needed anything. The only time I was acknowledged was when someone needed me to bring out more food. I could hear the laughter from the other room, the sound of glasses clinking, the joy of a wedding day. But none of that seemed meant for me. I started to wonder when I had become so invisible to my own family. How had I gone from the center of everything to a forgotten woman in the back of the house? I stood there, stirring the sauce, trying to keep my composure. But I couldn't ignore the ache in my chest, the feeling that my family, the people I loved, had decided I no longer mattered. It hurt more than I could put into words. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Lily came into the kitchen to ask me to wrap up a few things. She didn't look me in the eye, didn't offer a smile, just spoke to me in the same flat tone she had for the past few months. I nodded and kept my voice steady, but inside I was dying. After dinner, Lily and her new husband, Peter, walked past the kitchen and out the door. They didn't even glance in my direction. And as I stood there in that empty kitchen, the tears I had been holding back finally came. I felt like a stranger in my own home, like my whole life had led to this moment where I was being left behind. And that's when it hit me. The receipt. It was in the trash, half hidden beneath a pile of napkins and scraps. A receipt from a high-end boutique, where Lily had bought a dress for one of her friends to wear to the wedding. My heart sank. She hadn't even bothered to buy me a dress. She hadn't even considered the possibility that I might want to look nice on her special day. She had made sure that I wasn't part of the celebration in any way. No dress. No acknowledgement. Just me, in the kitchen, doing everything for everyone else. And that receipt, that small piece of paper, it was the proof I needed. It was the confirmation that I had been pushed aside intentionally. That no one cared enough to even include me in the simplest things. I wasn't even worth the effort of making me feel like I mattered on her wedding day. I stared at the receipt for what felt like forever, the weight of it pressing down on me. The realization that my own daughter had chosen to ignore me, to treat me like an afterthought, was a blow I didn't know I could recover from. And I stood there, in that cold kitchen, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong. I had always been there for her. I had sacrificed so much for my family. But now, I was nothing more than a ghost in the background, a shadow at the edge of her perfect day. The days after the wedding felt like a blur. I tried to keep myself busy, but the reality of what had happened sank deeper with each passing hour. I kept thinking about that receipt, the confirmation that I had been pushed aside on the one day that should have been about family. But it wasn't just that, it was everything leading up to it. I thought back to the years I had spent supporting Lily, always there when she needed me, always making sure she had what she wanted. But now, it seemed like none of that mattered. The love I had given her, the sacrifices I had made, none of it had been enough to earn a place in her life. It hurt more than I could express. I spent the next few days avoiding phone calls and messages. I couldn't bear to hear their voices, to pretend that everything was fine. I wanted to confront Lily, but I couldn't find the right words. I wanted to ask her why, to demand an explanation for her behavior, but deep down, I already knew the answer. She had changed. The girl I raised, the one who once looked up to me with so much love and trust, had become someone I didn't recognize. I sat alone in my living room, staring out the window at the yard. The sun was setting, casting a soft orange glow across the sky, but the beauty of the moment couldn't reach me. Everything felt hollow. I had spent years building a home, raising a family, and now it seemed like I was nothing more than an afterthought. The loneliness I felt wasn't just from being ignored. It was the realization that my place in my daughter's life had been taken for granted, that I had been replaced by something or someone else. I thought about reaching out to my son, Daniel, but he was always busy, and I didn't want to burden him with my problems. I didn't want to make him choose between me and Lily. I knew that would only make things worse. So I stayed silent, hoping that time would heal the wound, that somehow things would go back to the way they were. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't. That evening, as I sat down for dinner alone, I got a text from Lily. It was a short message, nothing more than a polite check-in. "I hope you're doing well. We should catch up soon." I stared at the words for a long time, the coldness of them sinking in. No apology, no mention of the wedding, no acknowledgement of how hurt I had been. I felt a pang in my chest as I realized that she had already moved on. For her, the wedding was just another event, another day to celebrate her new life with Peter. But for me, it was a reminder of how far apart we had grown. I didn't reply to the message. What was there to say? I had nothing left to give, nothing left to offer. The days turned into weeks, and still, Lily never reached out. I began to wonder if she even noticed my absence. Maybe, in her eyes, I had become just another old woman, someone who had outlived her usefulness. I tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept creeping back into my mind. I didn't want to be forgotten. I didn't want to fade into the background. But I couldn't force Lily to care. One evening, I received a call from my sister, Ruth. She could tell something was wrong by the way I answered the phone. "Marilyn, what's going on?" she asked, her voice soft but concerned. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether to say anything. But Ruth had always been there for me, even when my own children weren't. "It's Lily," I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. "She doesn't need me anymore. She's forgotten about me. I've been nothing but a burden to her." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Ruth spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "Marilyn, you're not a burden. You've given them everything. Don't let them make you feel like you don't matter." Her words were comforting, but they didn't take away the ache in my heart. I knew Ruth was right. I had given everything, and now, it felt like none of it mattered. I had spent my whole life making sure my family was happy, making sure they were taken care of. But now, it was clear that all of my efforts had been in vain. I was alone. And the worst part was that no one seemed to care. Not Lily, not Peter, not anyone. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to make my daughter see me again. But I knew one thing: I couldn't keep living this way. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. Something had to change. I had to take control of my life, even if that meant letting go of the family I had spent my life building. It wasn't easy, but it was the only way I could move forward. I couldn't keep holding on to a past that no longer existed. And so, I made the decision. I was going to start living for myself. I wasn't going to wait around for Lily or anyone else to come around. I was going to take back my life, piece by piece. I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. I wasn't going to hide in the kitchen while everyone else lived their lives. It was time for me to start living too. And maybe, just maybe, I would find the strength to heal from the hurt they had caused me. Maybe, just maybe, I would find my way back to happiness. The days after my decision to move forward felt like both a relief and a struggle. I had made up my mind, but the weight of the situation was still heavy on my chest. I wasn't sure where to start, but I knew I had to take the first step. So I started small. I began to focus on little things, things that would make me feel like myself again. I spent the next few days cleaning out my closet, getting rid of old clothes I never wore, and organizing my house. I had always prided myself on keeping my home neat and inviting, but now, it felt like I was cleaning up more than just the clutter. I was cleaning up the mess that my life had become. I felt like I was reclaiming my space, one small task at a time. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had control over something. It was a small victory, but it was mine. I started walking every morning in the park near my house. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get me out of the house, away from the memories, away from the pain. I hadn't realized how much I missed being outside, how much I missed the simple pleasure of a quiet morning walk. It was a moment just for me, where I could breathe without feeling like I was suffocating. As I walked, I began to feel a sense of peace returning, little by little. It wasn't the same as it was before, when everything felt stable and predictable. But it was something. It was mine. A week later, I received a call from Daniel. He sounded concerned, as always. "Mom, how are you? I haven't heard from you in a while." I paused, unsure of how to respond. I didn't want to drag him into my pain, didn't want to make him feel guilty for something that wasn't his fault. "I'm fine, Daniel. Just taking some time for myself." I could hear the hesitation in his voice, the worry that he wasn't sure if that was really the case. "Are you sure? You know you can always talk to me." I smiled softly, even though he couldn't see me. "I know, sweetheart. I appreciate it. I just need some space right now." There was a long silence on the other end of the line before Daniel spoke again. I don't know what happened with Lily. I thought you two were close. What's going on?" His words hit me harder than I expected. I had always been open with Daniel, always tried to shield him from the complexities of our family dynamics. But now, it seemed impossible to avoid the truth. "I don't know, Daniel," I said, my voice catching in my throat. I've tried to be there for her, but it feels like she's shut me out. Like I'm invisible to her." There was another pause, and then Daniel spoke gently. "I don't understand, Mom. You've done so much for her. You don't deserve this." I could hear the frustration in his voice, the confusion. "I know, honey. I don't understand it either. But it's happening, and I don't know how to fix it." "Have you tried talking to her?" he asked. I sighed, the weight of the question pressing down on me. "I've tried, but she won't listen. She just brushes me off." I could sense Daniel's helplessness through the phone, his desire to fix things but knowing he couldn't. "I don't know what to say, Mom. I'm sorry. This isn't fair to you." His words, though kind, only made the situation feel more real, more painful. But in that moment, I realized something important. Daniel still cared. He still saw me, and for that, I was grateful. "It's not your fault, Daniel," I said softly. "I just have to figure this out on my own." After the call, I spent the rest of the day in a daze. The conversation with Daniel had opened something inside me, something I had been keeping locked away. I had spent so long trying to fix everything for everyone else that I had forgotten how to fix myself. But now, I was realizing that I had to stop trying to fix what I couldn't control. I couldn't change Lily's behavior, and I couldn't make her care. What I could control was how I lived my life from this point on. That night, as I sat alone at the kitchen table, I realized that I had to let go. Let go of the hurt, let go of the expectations, and let go of the idea that things would go back to how they were. I couldn't keep holding on to the past. It was time to move forward. The next day, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep hiding away in my house, in the shadow of the family that had turned their backs on me. I was going to take up space again. I was going to live my life, even if it meant doing it without their approval. I didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on my own 2 feet again. I wasn't sure where this journey would take me, but I knew I was ready for whatever came next. I didn't need anyone else to validate my worth. I had already spent too much time trying to earn their approval. It was time to start living for me. It had been 2 weeks since my conversation with Daniel, and though I had been trying to move forward, the weight of the situation still clung to me like a heavy coat. The house felt quieter, emptier, though the walls were still the same. The things that once filled my life with purpose now felt distant and foreign. But something was slowly changing inside me. I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew I was starting to feel different. Maybe it was the long walks in the park, or the hours I spent working on my garden. Maybe it was just the simple act of waking up each day with a little more strength. Whatever it was, I was beginning to feel like I had a choice again. I had a choice in how I spent my time and who I spent it with. It wasn't much, but it was a start. One afternoon, I decided to take a trip into town. I had been avoiding going out, not wanting to run into anyone, but today, something pushed me to get in my car and drive. As I made my way through the familiar streets, I realized just how much I had isolated myself. I had allowed the pain of the past few weeks to dictate my every move, to control my decisions. But now, I felt the urge to reclaim some of my life, to step outside the boundaries I had set for myself. The town square was bustling with activity. People were out shopping, having coffee, and chatting on the benches. It felt like a different world compared to the quiet, lonely days I had been living. As I walked down the sidewalk, I saw a small cafe on the corner that I used to visit with my late husband. It had been years since I stepped foot inside, but today, it felt like the right place to be. I walked in, the doorbell chiming softly as I entered. The smell of fresh coffee and baked goods filled the air, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at ease. I ordered a cup of coffee and sat at a table near the window, watching the world go by. It wasn't much, but in that moment, it felt like a small victory. I was learning to live for myself again, to find joy in the little things. As I sat there, sipping my coffee, my phone buzzed in my purse. I hesitated before picking it up. It was a message from Lily. "Hey, Mom. We need to talk." My heart sank. I hadn't heard from her in over 2 weeks, and now, out of nowhere, she was reaching out. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to ignore the message, to continue with my life without her involvement. But another part of me, the part that still wanted my daughter in my life, felt a pull to respond. I took a deep breath and typed back. "What's going on, Lily?" There was a long pause before she replied. "I know things have been weird between us. I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I want to apologize for how I've treated you. Can we meet and talk?" My stomach twisted as I read the message. Apologize? After everything that had happened, was this really happening? I wasn't sure what to make of it. Part of me wanted to jump at the chance to fix things, to hear her words and believe that she really understood what she had done. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt so deeply, didn't know if I could trust her words. "When?" I typed back, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Tomorrow morning? I'll be at the park around 10, she replied. I looked down at my phone, unsure of what to do. Could I really sit down with her? Could I hear her out without falling apart? I didn't have an answer, but I knew I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. The next morning, I drove to the park, my hands gripping the steering wheel as I made my way to the spot where Lily had asked me to meet her. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew this conversation would be a turning point. When I saw her standing near the fountain, I felt a mix of emotions. She looked the same as she always had, but there was something different about her, something that made me uncertain. I got out of the car and walked over to her, my heart pounding in my chest. She smiled softly when she saw me, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, Mom," she said quietly. "Hi," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a long pause as we stood there, the silence between us thick with unspoken words. Finally, Lily spoke. "I'm sorry for everything. I was selfish, and I pushed you away when you didn't deserve it. I've been thinking about how I treated you, and I realize now that I've hurt you more than I ever realized." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how much she had hurt me, to make her understand what it felt like to be abandoned by your own child. But I didn't. I stayed quiet, waiting for her to continue. "I've been so caught up in my own life, in my own problems, that I didn't see how I was hurting you. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. Can you ever forgive me? I stared at her for a long moment, my heart torn between the love I had for her and the pain I had been carrying. Could I forgive her? Could I forget the way she had treated me? I didn't have an answer, not yet. But I knew one thing: I was done being the person who was always there to clean up the mess. I had spent my whole life giving, sacrificing, loving, and it was time to stop. It was time for me to decide what was best for me, regardless of what Lily said or did. I don't know, Lily, I said quietly, my voice steady but firm. I need time. I need to think about everything. She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I understand, she whispered. I'll give you all the time you need. As I stood there, looking at my daughter, I realized that this moment was just the beginning. It wasn't the resolution I had hoped for, but it was a step forward. A step toward healing. A step toward reclaiming my own life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a small sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. It had been a week since my conversation with Lily, and I still wasn't sure where to stand. The silence between us was heavy, like a fog that refused to lift. I tried to go about my daily routine, but it felt as though something fundamental had shifted, and I couldn't pretend that everything was fine anymore. I spent more time alone, walking through the house, touching the things that had once been a part of my daily life with my family, but now felt distant. The familiar warmth of the kitchen, the living room where we used to gather for movie nights, all of it felt like a memory I couldn't hold on to. The pain of being pushed aside, of realizing that my daughter had chosen a new life without me in it, lingered in the corners of my mind. But despite the hurt, I knew I couldn't let it define me. It wasn't easy, but I made an effort to take small steps toward finding my own peace. I started visiting my neighbors more, reconnecting with old friends who had been part of my life before the turmoil. I hadn't realized how much I had withdrawn until I made an effort to step out of the house and back into the world. The warm smiles of my friends, their familiar faces, helped me remember that there was still kindness in the world. I found comfort in their company, in their understanding. But there were still moments, late at night when I was alone, when the ache in my chest would return. I had thought that once I made the decision to move on, everything would fall into place. But the truth was, healing wasn't that simple. There were days when I wanted to pick up the phone and call Lily, to hear her voice and pretend that things were okay, but I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. I had to face the reality of our relationship, and it hurt. I had to come to terms with the fact that I couldn't change her, and that maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop trying. But even though I understood that, it didn't make the pain go away. One afternoon, as I was sitting in the garden, trying to clear my mind, I received a message from Daniel. "Mom, I'm coming over to see you this weekend. We need to talk." I didn't know what to expect. Part of me feared that he wanted to talk about Lily again, about the unresolved tension that still hung in the air between us. But I also knew that Daniel cared for me, and I needed him. He had always been a steady presence in my life, a reminder that not everything was falling apart. When he arrived that Saturday, I could tell something was weighing on him. His face was tired, his shoulders slumped as if the world had been on his mind. We sat down on the porch, and he began to speak. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about everything. About you, about Lily, about the family. I don't want to make excuses for her, but I think there's more going on than you realize." I looked at him, unsure of where this conversation was headed. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice steady but uncertain. "Lily's been going through a lot. I don't know the details, but I know she's struggling with things she hasn't told you. I think that's why she's been pushing you away." My heart sank as I listened to him. I had suspected there was something more beneath the surface, but hearing it out loud, from my own son, made it feel more real. "I don't know if that makes it any easier to accept, but I thought you should know. She's not in a good place, Mom." His words were soft, as if he was trying to soften the blow, but I couldn't help but feel the sting of them. I had spent so many years taking care of my family, supporting them through everything, and now, here I was, hearing that my daughter was struggling with something I didn't even know about. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that I had been left out, left to wonder what had gone wrong. But in that moment, as Daniel sat beside me, I realized something important. This wasn't about being right or wrong anymore. It wasn't about fixing things for Lily or anyone else. It was about me. I had spent so much time focusing on others that I had forgotten to focus on myself. I had neglected my own needs, my own desires, and I couldn't keep doing that. I needed to let go of the expectation that I could fix everything. I needed to let go of the idea that my family owed me something. I understand, Daniel, I said softly, my voice steady, though the tears were threatening to rise. I just don't know what to do anymore. I don't know how to fix things with Lily, and I don't know if I can. You don't have to fix it all, Mom, he said gently. You just need to take care of yourself. And that's what I want you to focus on right now. You don't owe anyone anything, not even Lily. You've done enough. His words were a comfort, though they didn't take away the ache in my heart. But in that moment, I realized that I wasn't alone. I had Daniel. I had my friends. And most importantly, I had myself. I wasn't going to let the hurt of the past dictate my future. I had spent too long feeling sorry for myself, too long wondering what I could have done differently. It was time to stop living in the past and start living for the present. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to take that first step. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew that I was going to be okay. I wasn't going to let the pain hold me back anymore. I was going to live, not for anyone else, but for myself. The following days felt like a turning point. The weight that had been pressing down on me for so long started to lift, and though I knew the journey wasn't over, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. I spent the morning cleaning out the old bookshelves in the living room, sorting through the dusty piles of forgotten memories. It was tedious work, but there was something strangely satisfying about it. Each book I dusted off, each photo I found, was a small victory in the battle to reclaim my life. I had spent so much time holding on to the past, to the memories of what I had once had, that I had neglected to live in the present. But now, as I looked through the old pictures, I saw them differently. They weren't just reminders of the past. They were proof of the life I had lived, the love I had given, and the strength I had shown. I wasn't the person I had been just a few weeks ago. I had changed, and it felt good. Later that afternoon, I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. The sun was shining brightly, the air warm with the promise of spring. It felt like a new beginning, like the world was opening up to me in a way it hadn't in a long time. As I walked, I thought about everything that had happened. About Lily, about the hurt I had been carrying for so long, and about the choices I had made. I thought about my son, Daniel, and how much he had supported me through all of this. I thought about my friends, the ones who had never turned their backs on me. And most of all, I thought about myself. I had spent so much time trying to fix things for everyone else, trying to be the person they wanted me to be, that I had lost sight of who I was. But now, I was beginning to understand. I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I was enough just as I was. And that realization, that simple truth, was more freeing than anything I had ever experienced. As I walked down the street, I saw a little cafe I used to visit with my husband. It had been years since I had been inside, but today, it felt like the right place to be. I walked in, the bell above the door jingling softly as I entered. The smell of fresh coffee and pastries filled the air, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. I ordered a cup of coffee and sat down at a small table near the window. I took a sip of the warm beverage, letting the comforting taste wash over me. It wasn't much, but in that moment, it felt like everything I needed. The hustle and bustle of the cafe, the hum of quiet conversations, and the simple act of sitting there alone, yet not feeling alone, was a reminder that life could still be beautiful, even in its quiet moments. I didn't have to fix everything. I didn't have to have all the answers. I just had to keep moving forward, one step at a time. The world outside the cafe window was busy, full of people rushing around, living their lives. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was a part of it. I didn't need anyone to validate my existence. I had spent so much of my life waiting for that validation, but I now understood that I didn't need it. What I needed was to be true to myself, to trust that I was enough. After finishing my coffee, I decided to take a different route home. I walked through the park, the sunlight filtering through the trees, casting long shadows on the ground. I paused by the fountain, watching the water as it bubbled and splashed, the sound soothing and peaceful. And in that moment, I felt a sense of clarity. I had spent so many years trying to please everyone, trying to keep my family happy, trying to be the perfect mother, the perfect wife. But I had neglected myself in the process. Now, it was time to focus on me. It wasn't selfish. It was necessary. I couldn't keep living my life for others. I had to start living it for myself. As I stood there by the fountain, I felt a new sense of freedom. The future was uncertain, and I didn't know where it would take me, but I was no longer afraid. I had faced the pain, I had faced the truth, and I was stronger for it. I wasn't sure what the next chapter would bring, but I was ready to write it. When I returned home, I felt a sense of calm that had been missing for so long. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was simply at peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes from everything being perfect. It was the kind of peace that comes from accepting things as they are, from understanding that some things are beyond your control, and that's okay. The phone rang that evening, and it was Lily. My heart skipped a beat as I answered. "Mom," she said softly, "I've been thinking about what we talked about. I know I've hurt you, and I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know that I love you. I just don't know how to make things right." Her words were quiet, sincere, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for us to rebuild what had been broken. But for now, I knew I had to take care of myself. I had to be patient. I had to trust that everything would fall into place in time. And that, for the first time in a long time, I would be okay. The days following Lily's call felt like a slow unwrapping of something fragile. I had spent so much of my life wrapped up in the expectations of others, in the roles I had taken on, that I had almost forgotten what it felt like to just be myself. For the first time in a long time, I started to see a glimpse of who I was beneath all of the years of sacrifice and effort. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the old pain would creep back in, but I had learned to sit with it, to acknowledge it without letting it control me. One Saturday morning, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, looking at my reflection. The woman staring back at me was older, yes, but there was something in her eyes now, something that hadn't been there before. It was resilience. It was quiet strength. It was the kind of strength that comes from knowing you've been through the storm and come out on the other side. I wasn't broken. I was whole, and that was enough. As I brushed my hair and put on a simple dress, I realized that I wasn't doing this for anyone else. I wasn't dressing up for a family gathering or for Lily's approval. I was dressing up for myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to be someone I wasn't. I was being me. It felt liberating, and it was a feeling I had almost forgotten. That afternoon, I decided to visit a local art gallery. It had been ages since I'd done something just for the sake of enjoyment. When my husband had been alive, we used to go together. I had forgotten how much I loved the quiet contemplation of art, how it made me feel connected to something bigger than myself. As I wandered through the exhibit, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It wasn't the peace of a perfect life, there were still so many unanswered questions, but it was the peace of acceptance. I was learning to let go of the things I couldn't change and to embrace the things I could. By the time I left the gallery, the sun was beginning to set. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the moment. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was part of the world again, not hiding in the shadows but standing in the light. That evening, I sat down at the dinner table, a simple meal of salad and roasted chicken, just for myself. I thought about how much I had given to my family over the years, how much of myself I had poured into them, hoping for love, for recognition, for connection. But I also realized that the love I had been seeking from them was something I had to give myself first. I had to learn to love myself before I could expect anyone else to. It wasn't easy. There were still days when I missed my daughter, when I longed for the closeness we once shared. But I also understood now that I couldn't make her change. I couldn't force her to be the person I wanted her to be. All I could do was take care of myself, to focus on my own healing. The next day, Lily called again. I wasn't sure what to expect this time. But when I answered, there was a noticeable difference in her voice. "Mom," she said, her voice softer than it had been in a long time. "I've been thinking a lot. I know I hurt you, and I know I can't undo it, but I want to try to make things right. I don't want to lose you." I sat down slowly, letting her words settle into me. It wasn't an apology I had expected, but it was a start. "Lily," I said, my voice steady, "I don't know what the future holds for us, but I'm willing to try. I can't promise that everything will be okay right away, but I'm open to working on it." There was a long pause, and I could almost hear the relief in her sigh. "Thank you, Mom. I don't want things to be like they were. I'm sorry for everything." I didn't have the answers. I didn't know if our relationship would ever be the same as it had been, but I knew that in that moment, we had taken the first step toward healing. After the call, I sat there for a while, thinking about everything that had happened. I had spent so many years trying to fix things for others, trying to be the person everyone needed me to be, that I had lost sight of what was important. But now, I was learning to live for myself. I was learning to love myself. And that was enough. The healing would take time. I knew that. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the future. I was ready to face it, whatever it brought. And I was ready to do it on my own terms. The weeks that followed felt like a quiet yet steady transformation. I wasn't the same woman I had been just a few months ago, struggling in the shadows of my own family's expectations. Something had shifted within me. It wasn't all at once. It wasn't a grand revelation. But piece by piece I was finding my way back to myself. Lily and I spoke more often now, though the conversations were still awkward, still a bit guarded. I didn't expect everything to be fixed overnight. I didn't even know if things would ever be the same between us. But the fact that we were talking again felt like progress. Sometimes, our conversations were light, as if we were trying to find our way back to the easy rapport we once had. Other times, we would pause, unsure of what to say next, as the weight of the past still lingered in the space between us. But it was something. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like a beginning. In the meantime, I found myself starting new things. I joined a local book club, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. I picked up painting again, an old hobby I had put aside when life became too busy. It was strange at first. The canvas felt like an old friend I had forgotten how to talk to, but as I kept at it, the brushstrokes began to flow more naturally. It felt good to be creating something again, to be lost in the process without the pressure of doing it perfectly. There was freedom in it, a kind of peaceful surrender. And it was just for me. I didn't have to prove anything. I didn't have to make anyone else proud. I could simply exist and create, without the weight of expectations. One afternoon, I decided to take a trip to the beach. It had been years since I had felt the sand between my toes, the cool breeze against my skin. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. It was a solo trip, one I took just for myself. As I walked along the shore, the waves crashing softly against the sand, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of peace settle over me. The world felt vast and beautiful, and for the first time in so long, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. The sky was clear, and the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden light over the water. I sat down on the sand and watched the horizon, taking in the beauty of the moment. I thought about how far I had come, about the pain I had endured, and the strength it had taken to get to this point. I had lost so much, but I had also gained so much. I had gained the freedom to be myself, the strength to let go of what no longer served me, and the peace that came with acceptance. I wasn't sure what the future held. I didn't know if Lily and I would ever be as close as we once were, or if I would ever fully heal from the hurt she had caused. But I did know one thing. I had learned to live for myself, to stop waiting for others to define my worth. That was something no one could take away from me. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, I stood up and walked back to my car, feeling the soft sand beneath my feet. I felt lighter than I had in years. I felt like I had let go of a weight I didn't even realize I had been carrying. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was walking towards something new, something better. The road ahead wasn't clear, and I knew there would still be challenges to face. But I also knew I was ready for them. I had survived the storm, and now, I was ready to embrace the calm. I had my life back. And that was enough. It had been a few months since that day at the beach, and life had slowly started to feel like it was coming together again. I spent my days filling them with things that made me feel alive: long walks, painting, and rediscovering the things I had pushed aside for so many years. But it wasn't just the hobbies or the activities that were changing. I felt myself changing from the inside out. I was learning to trust myself again. I was learning that it was okay to let go of things that no longer served me. The pain, the disappointments, they were still there, but they didn't have control over me anymore. They didn't define me. One evening, as I was sitting on the porch, enjoying the cool breeze that swept across the yard, I got a message from Lily. It had been a few weeks since our last conversation, and while we had been making small strides toward healing, I wasn't sure where we stood. I hadn't expected her to reach out, not after everything that had happened. I opened the message, my heart beating just a little faster. "Mom, can we talk? I know I've messed up, and I don't know how to make things right. But I'm trying. Please let me know when you're free." My mind raced as I read the words. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to close that door and leave it closed. But another part of me, the part that had learned to forgive, the part that had learned to let go, felt a tug. She was trying. And maybe, just maybe, it was time for me to try too. I took a deep breath and replied, "I'm free tomorrow afternoon. Let's meet at the park, like before." The next day, as I drove to the park, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of emotions. I was nervous, but also hopeful. Hopeful that we could start to rebuild what had been broken. But also cautious. I had been hurt, and while I wanted to forgive, I wasn't sure if I could just erase everything that had happened. When I arrived, I saw Lily sitting by the fountain, her back turned to me. She hadn't seen me yet, but I could tell she was waiting for me. Her posture was different than before, more relaxed, less defensive. I walked over slowly, my heart in my throat. As soon as she saw me, she stood up, her eyes wide with emotion. "Mom," she said softly, her voice shaky. "I don't know where to begin. I've hurt you so much, and I'm sorry. I've been so caught up in my own life that I didn't even see how much I was pushing you away. I've been thinking about everything, and I realize now that I've lost you in the process." I felt my throat tighten as I listened to her words. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to reach out, to tell her that I understood, that I was willing to forgive. But the words felt stuck in my chest. She had hurt me deeply, and though I was ready to forgive, it didn't make it any easier. "Lily," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I don't know if I can forget what's happened. I don't know if we can go back to how things were. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to rebuild, even if it takes time." Tears welled up in her eyes as she nodded. "I understand, Mom. I don't expect everything to be okay right away. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'll be here, no matter how long it takes. I want to make things right." I reached out, placing my hand on hers. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a bridge between us, a step towards something new. I knew that we couldn't erase the past, but we could work together to build something stronger. We'll take it one step at a time, I said softly. One day at a time. We sat there for a while, not saying much, just letting the silence speak for us. There was so much to say, so much to work through, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fixed. But it was a start. The next few weeks weren't easy. We had our ups and downs, moments of progress and setbacks. But with each conversation, each small step forward, I could feel the weight lifting. I wasn't sure if we would ever be as close as we had once been, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that we were moving in the right direction. I didn't expect Lily to change overnight, and I knew I still had healing to do. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were both trying. We were both putting in the effort. And that was enough. One evening, a few months later, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I realized that life had a way of surprising you. It had a way of giving you what you needed, even if it wasn't what you expected. I had been through so much. I had been hurt, abandoned, and lost. But I had also found strength. I had found peace. And most importantly, I had found a way to let go. I wasn't the same person I had been. I was stronger, wiser, and more at peace with myself. And no matter what happened next, I knew I was going to be okay.